Live, it's comp plan meeting.
Okay, we'll call the meeting to order at 7:05. And I know you all have the agenda for several days. Anybody have anything they want to amend? Okay, not seeing any outcry, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Okay, all those in favor? All righty. Do we have any minutes to approve?
No.
Okay, that was quick. All right, let me fill you in a little bit on what has happened since our last meeting, which was when we met with the public about UB2. At the planning board's next meeting, they also, even though they weren't invited, the public showed up anyway, which was good. And they got much the same feedback that we did in terms of the fact that we had some of the landowners who really wanted not to be terribly restricted with regards to residential development. And the planning board heard that loud and clear and basically came to the conclusion that the restriction that we had put in our language, they didn't want, which is the reason for the first item on the agenda, which is to review their changes to that proposed ordinance. And I put it including permitted and conditional uses because I know some of you had expressed to me that you thought some things that were not on the list perhaps should be, and they may be now because the planning board's gone over it again, but I put that on just so we could take a look at the list and determine whether we had any more suggestions for them. But the major problem is to address the prohibition on residential uses that we had built in as strongly worded as it was. I thought to facilitate that discussion, I would put together some proposed language, and I have two options here. And what I'd like you to do is read both of them in their entirety first, and then we'll go from there in terms of discussion. What is in italics is what I have put in as a proposed new way to say what we need to say. Both of these reflect planning board discussion from last week, by the way. And Sean has a question.
What is the incentive plan?
Did I not disseminate that to the comprehensive plan committee?
We did not.
Oops.
Well, in a nutshell, what that boil the note is the nutshell. That if you have X number of acres and you dedicate, let's say 50% of it to commercial development, then your residential lot size might be 2 acres. But if you were to designate 60% to commercial, then your lot size might be 1.5 acres. So the more you dedicate to commercial, the smaller your residential lot size would be, thus allowing you to build more houses and win on both sides of the equation. Is that a pretty good summary?
That's pretty good, yeah. And there were 4 options given, and the one in the middle, which is always the one that you want, option 3 was a percentage based. The others were ratio based, and the one the far end was PMUD based. And the first one was.
We don't need to discuss those because they're not options here at this point.
No, but I will say that option 1 was what the planning board went with, which is pretty much existing conditions. Basically allow residential. The planning, you'll note in there, in the space of bulk, they basically are allowing residential unfettered. The only thing about it that's different is that those lots that are in the R1 district are in fact, if the minimum lot size is 2 acres, they're actually, that's a doubling of the, that's a lessening by 1.5 of the density that's allowed in the R1 district. But in the R2 district, which is the bulk of this new district, it's the same zoning as it currently is. So there's no change.
Any other questions?
I was at that particular meeting, and I remember them talking about incentives. I don't know how the subdivisions got back on that though. I mean, I thought we were trying to keep that.
Well, that's kind of the reason for this, all right? And now let me give you another little bit of background.
Okay.
When we started this process, and I'm only talking about DB2, it was the planning board's request that we, as a comprehensive plan committee, write some language that would encourage commercial development and discourage residential development, so as to make maximum commercial use of that particular zone. And that was what we did. Upon hearing from, and again, I will remind you that that was a backwards process. We should have done our work first, and they should be reflecting our work. However, that's how it happened. As of the public input that we got, where we had several landowners who were concerned about those restrictions on residential development, and the meeting that you attended, the planning board ran, where there were similar concerns expressed, the planning board decided to back off the position of restricting residential development. And they did that at their meeting last week, which is what Tad was just referencing in terms of option 1. The reason that I'm presenting option 2 on our little list is because we really should be in the leadership position for this, despite the fact that the process worked the other way. If the intent is to take DB2 and create a place where commercial development can occur with the primary purpose of changing the tax base in town, then option 1, as you see it here, completely undermines that. That wasn't what the planning board wanted in the first place. Option 2 gives us perhaps not the best of both worlds, but at least some of both worlds. It takes the sting out of it for the residential piece, so that if people wish to do residential development, they still can, but it gives them a concrete incentive to do commercial development instead, or at least in larger part. So we're in a position, because we are setting the tone for what the planning board does, we can tonight make a decision, if we so choose, to go with either option 1, which is kind of where they are now, but will pretty much undermine the commercial development, or go with option 2, which does what I just described, encourages the commercial development and still allows for the residential development to some degree.
Are we limited to those 2 options?
Yes and no. And the reason that I say that, I have no doubt that, some of the, if we went with option 2, for example, it may need to be wordsmithed and cleaned up a little bit. The other options were the ones that Tad had presented to the planning board, which have different sets of advantages and disadvantages. And when the planning board had their discussion last week, these were the 2 that they ended up with and had their discussion and vote on. So there is some, not well, and they had a 4-3 vote, so they don't have consensus.
That was a 4-3 vote? That's what I wanted to know.
I don't think the planning board is going to be upset if we go with option 2. If we come up with something entirely different, I think that will muddy the water and complicate things. But if it's a much better option, I wouldn't, oppose discussing it. Did you have something in mind?
What I had in mind was going back to our original wording that we gave to the planning board. It seems to me that we've opened everything up again for more residential development down there than we planned on, if we go with either of these options. What I'm trying to get at, Donna, is we gave a suggestion to the planning board. The planning board has evidently rejected that suggestion. Now, who has precedence here? Us or them, as far as which way to go?
Keep in mind, neither of us do.
Okay?
Ultimately, the community's got to vote on the comp plan, affirm it, and then I mean, that's the way it should be. Not only we're going backwards as Donna described, but we're gonna have this, you know, this simultaneous process, which is not really good, but,
In response to your comment, I understand what you're saying, but we did take the time, both in the joint meeting and then our separate second meeting and then the planning board's sort of spontaneous meeting with the public to obtain and hear the public input. I don't think we will be very well served, nor will the community be well served to just ignore that input wholesale, which is what, going back to our original wording, I think that would be the message.
I hear you, but the meeting I was at when we had the public here, I didn't hear any substantial objections to what we had originally proposed. I understand that maybe the planning board has, but I certainly didn't hear it at the meeting we had.
were you at that meeting, Donna, or you read?
I was at the planning
The
board.
workshopping, and we need to make a distinction between the public hearings,
Right.
which
I
the
was
planning
there.
board had two, one of which was joint with you folks. And then we had a workshop crammed up in the CEO office, we're expecting,
Right.
as usual, nobody, because we got thrown out of here.
Right.
And of course, that's when everybody showed up, lying on top of file cabinets and stuff. It was quite a show. But that was a surprise. It was packed, and people were standing in the hall, as I recall.
They weren't.
And it was packed, and there were a lot of landowners who, there were a number of local landowners.
Yeah.
There were some other landowners that were commercial based that expressed interest in making sure the commercial side went through. I think that was the reps for Bentley's, for instance. And I
Right.
received comments from another commercial landowner who was very adamant, and who actually been holding off on the project waiting for this to pass because of his interest in the DB2 district. He well serves his purpose and actually is following pretty much our model on what we want to do. The only thing is, either way, it's not going to affect him unless DB2 doesn't go forward, then it affects him. And I would say the same thing with Bentley. It's not going to affect him unless DB2 doesn't go forward, then it affects him very definitely.
I mean, the option 2 doesn't restrict the commercial development at all.
No, I understand that, Donna, but the more residential development you get down there, that is gonna restrict any commercial development. I don't think most businesses want to open up right next door to a house.
Well, all right, let me get Diane in here.
There are other communities that do mixed uses. And they have houses and businesses and everything is all mixed up together. And they seem to be cohabitating. Now, I've lived here a long time. I've seen a lot of town meetings. And while I can sympathize with the fact that some people would like to see more business, and I think it benefits everyone in town, I can't deny that. But part of our charge is not just weighing one particular interest. We're supposed to take a look at the town. If we don't get this passed, because people will not pass it because of the no residential use, then in my opinion, we've shot ourselves in the foot. And then we've lost another year, and lost how many businesses that could potentially have done something within that year. In my opinion, I like option number 2, because while it doesn't change the makeup of what they need for acreage if they want to subdivide it into house lots, it certainly does give them an incentive to put more of it in business than in houses. So essentially what it does is it encourages them to do part of it in business because it's worth their while if they want to divide it up or they want to put houses on it. But on the other hand, if they don't lose their rights. And that's one of the things that I'm very sympathetic of, and that is, we didn't buy the land that's in this business district. We didn't buy it, we didn't pay for it, we didn't mortgage it, we didn't work the overtime for it, and we didn't pay the taxes on it. These people have. Now, there were people in those meetings that said they bought it, they wanted their kids to have it, and they were concerned that dividing, making it so you couldn't have more than one was gonna be an issue. And I think you have to listen to that, because this is a pretty substantial chunk of land. You could also find, and I can remember when Route 111 was all houses. It was all houses. And they moved the houses, moved them up the road, moved them down the road, tore some of them down, because the businesses wanted that land. Eventually, if this does build up, they can purchase those houses, people will sell them, it happens. But I think that we have to be very careful to ensure that we represent everybody. And there's been something about this process, and I'm gonna say it now because it's been bugging me now for the last few public hearings. And I think that we as a group have to be very careful how strongly we come across in regards to saying you want to take somebody's property and make it all commercial because the town needs the business taxes. Because while some of us who sit on these committees fully understand how that works, for the average Joe Schmo that owns this property, they don't fully understand it. And for some people, that can be almost offensive. So I think that we have to be very careful in how we approach this, because it is such a, for me, this is a large new chunk. You know, you're not just taking 2 lots or 3 lots and joining it. You're taking some substantial pieces and joining it in. And in order for it to work, and in order for it to pass the town hall, you have to have buy-in. And I can tell you, I would like to see it pass, but I have some concerns that if you try to restrict all of the residential, they don't come to these meetings. But they will go in the newspaper and they will show up at town meeting. And I would rather do baby steps and try to make it work for both parties than feel like we lost it all.
Were the comments at the public hearing, I mean, absolutely opposed to restricting residential development? Or
Well,
was
one
it
of the most
this?
vocal wasn't even in the district, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I explained that to him several times. But there were those who were very concerned about it. I would say there was one family that owns a lot of land there that was sitting on the fence. And I talked to them several times, and they were saying, well, you know, we like the idea of the commercial, but you know, who knows what's gonna happen in the future. We might need to sell some land because mom's gonna get sick. She's gonna have to go into a convalescent home or something. She needs aftercare or something like that. And that's a resource that we need to be able to make liquid in an emergency situation. Right now, it's more liquid as residential than it is as commercial. Access, of course, is always the issue in these situations, as you know. I mean, it's development. Something, residential's always liquid, but accessibility is always the issue of what makes it liquid. In many cases, it's tough. But that was the concern, and they were very thoughtful about it. They liked the idea of the incentive. They went with the incentive. But then there are others who were very adamant. I mean, there was one family in there that actually were not residents, but had owned the land for several generations. And they were absolutely convinced that Arundel will never grow and that they want to be able to flip it for residential at the time, if the time ever comes. So they were negative about it. And then there were some who really didn't express that much. You know, there were several adamants, and then there were several on the fences, and frankly, the couple from Winslow, by the way, asked to opt out. And said, that's okay, you weren't in the first place, so. Wish granted. Because they were landlocked. But, you know, it was a lot of concern, as Diane says, they see it as a loss of rights because they, right now, don't, you know, they don't see a demand at this particular time. So,
Everything's a loss of rights. I mean, when you put zoning in place, it's a loss of rights. You can't do some things, you can't do others. But did anybody express concerns about being restricted from subdivision as that's defined by the statute?
I don't know, is there?
I don't know. No, they were, you know, most of these people are looking at this, again, as I say, pretty much as family divisions.
Right.
Cutting out pieces.
Mhm.
And maybe if it involves subdivision, because they need to flip it for you know, personal financial reasons, and that will be a subdivision, as you well know. They need to sell 2 or 3 lots, you know, to make it for a financial emergency, and that's gonna involve subdivision anyways. So that's what they were concerned about. They were concerned about they never said it, but the implication was they were concerned that restrictions that would prevent them from getting a little bit of money out of the land while they're waiting, you know, that was the greatest concern. So hence the incentive that the planning board's reaction to this was, okay, let's go incentive here. Let's incentivize this. Let's make it, yes, we'll give you those rights, but, you know, we're gonna make it so it's more attractive for you to do commercial. But here's the rub on all that. In order to do that, when you get a 1 acre zone, there's not any more incentive that you can give. You're gonna have to actually raise the minimum lot size. And quite frankly, in most of the R1 down in that area, you should anyways, because some of the land is pretty wet. The R2 is actually not as bad as some of the R1. And then there's some sections of the R1 that are in gravel and perfect for one. So you're gonna be taking something away in doing that, but still preserving the rights. And yes, it was a very simple step system that staff developed to make it very clear. We never really argued on relative sizes, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, that kind of thing, to make it a very clear system. And those amounts of acreage can be massaged, but the object was always to, if you had more than, I think it's 60%, you know, residential or commercial, you get 1 acre zone. I think that's what it boiled down to. If you had less than that, you get 2 acres zone.
But you got 1 acre now, so now you're gonna lose an acre.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're gonna lose an acre. Yeah.
But at least you
That was
can
the
do
problem.
it.
At least you could do it.
That's the incentive.
So from our from this board's march, or the planning board's march, it was an incentive because before it was can't do anything. And now it's, yes, you can, but at a lesser density.
And would the folks here, did they hear that, and were they receptive to losing the current minimum lot size and putting that to this incentive program?
Well, the incentive program came afterwards. I mean, you remember, after that workshop.
Right.
And there really wasn't anybody at that meeting. That was the planning board's reaction. The planning board, there were members of the planning board that said that's not an incentive. You're taking rights away and then saying, oh, we'll give it back to you if you do this. Yeah.
That's,
Which is true.
that's absolutely, I can see people howling about that.
But in relative terms to where we started, it was, no, you can't at all. So that was the incentive thing. And I think we were talking about going even lower on some of the residential with sewer. You know, sewer is also another, if sewer ever happens, that's a major incentive right there. And the argument among the planning board was nobody's going to extend sewer for residential. They'll extend it for commercial, but the townspeople are not likely to build a sewer line that's going to serve residential properties, because that's just facilitating, frankly, more kids in school, which is one of the issues.
So,
I guess I don't quite understand, just because I'm new to this, how, so we give someone the property owner the right to sell off a lot or 2 of their land, so that becomes a subdivision then, if you sell any part of your property to someone?
Well, the word subdivision has 2 meanings.
Well, explain it to me then, so what does it mean here?
Tom, you want to take this, or shall I?
Well, that's one of the conversations we had at the last meeting. We need to clarify what that means. I mean, that's a term of art in the statute. Subdivision means 3 lots in 5 years. Okay? That's what the statute said. Now, there are exemptions to that, such as conveyance to family members. Don't count that lot. And there are a number of other exemptions that you don't count the lot. 40 acres or more.
Abutters.
So, But if we're talking subdivision, that's what that means. And that's why I asked the question. I mean, basically, it's, if we're talking about subdivision defined by the statute, that's a lot different from just saying I'm gonna give a lot to a child.
Right.
Which is technically a subdivision.
But you subdivide a lot, yeah.
But
It's
to me,
exempt from the planning board
if you go by the statute, which makes sense to say that, you know, I don't have a problem. And I think that was one of the things we've talked about is, so you want your family to have a piece of this land and build a house, and it's more than one family member, so two of them build one over the course of time, in more time than 3 houses in 5 years. Well, I think that, I guess I don't see that as an issue, but when we say, go ahead and build a subdivision, then to me, we're just encouraging building subdivisions as opposed to saying, no, that, I would like, I mean, I just felt that really the idea of excluding subdivisions, you know, doing the family lot division is fine, but not to do subdivisions. And I don't know, I just feel like we're not changing anything from, I don't know, I don't think we're making a definitive enough statement by saying, and subdivisions too.
I mean,
That's why I was asking the question, whether anybody was concerned about that, you know, all that goes with a subdivision, planning board approval, roads, infrastructure.
That
Probably
wasn't the
not.
concern. It's not the concern,
Right.
because they're not aware of it.
Right.
They're not attuned to it. What they are, what they're concerned about is not the family members. The concern is really investment, to be able to reap some return from their property. So it's an investment question. It's a business question. It's not a family, abode question. At least from the people who participate.
Mhm.
So for them, then subdivisions would have been an issue.
Sure,
Because
yeah.
they're looking at,
Oh, sure.
I mean, and hypothetically, they could be correct. Because if businesses don't start to pick up, then that commercial land could sit there for a long time. And if you need the money, but nobody wants to buy commercial property because they're not putting a business, then you've essentially kind of bankrupted it.
Well,
Because they can't sell it, well, they can't sell it for house lots. If you don't allow them to do subdivisions or allow them to cut it off. If you do 3 or more, then you've caused a subdivision. So you're not allowing them to sell it, but no one's ready to put businesses on it, so nobody wants to buy for commercial property. And I don't want to put anybody in that. I guess part of my issue is I really don't want to put somebody in that situation.
I will tell you this, a lot of the properties we're talking about, and I can flip that map around, but a lot of the properties we're talking about are interior parcels or land. Yeah. The problem for them, the reason why it hasn't developed is because the costs of road construction are so high. And Rundle, very frankly, if you look at our lots, we have a lot of long, narrow lots that go very deeply into the land. And a lot of the lots that you can cut along the road have already been cut. And so we're looking at parcels where you're not going to develop a lot of it until you start talking about some major expenses of building roads.
Right,
If
but
you're
there
going
are
to build a
others, though,
road, then
that
you're going
aren't
to build
land- there
a
are
lot of
quite a few,
lots.
though,
It's
that
gonna
aren't
hit you that way.
landlocked.
Doesn't that, in effect, automatically solve the problem by default?
Well, that's why we haven't seen subdivisions out there. Exactly.
That's my point.
It's a cost issue.
If on paper, and in terms of the plan, we say to these landowners, you have the option to do this. Now, if it happens to be impractical, that's your problem. It's because that's the nature of your land and your parcel. But we're not restricting them from doing it. But from what you're describing, the nature of both the land, because of wetland and or other factors, and the physical positioning of the land almost makes it impossible for the subdivisions to occur. Or at the very least, it's highly impractical.
It's been a long speed table, as I told you before. It's
So
a big bump. It's a cost issue.
it's not likely to happen even if we say go ahead and do it.
Well, the thing is, we've got 1 acre zoning on many of these lots and have had 1 acre zoning for
And
what?
it hasn't happened.
Yeah, for 12 years. Actually, yeah, about 12 years. And very little has happened.
Then why are we
You see,
concerned with taking it away if they haven't used
See, I-
it.
well, Don,
Because attracting businesses, you're not, it's a deterrent to a business, I believe, to come in. I'm not gonna invest that much in this hard-to-build parcel if I believe they're gonna put 2 or 3 houses next door that's gonna complain and bitch about what I'm doing with my business in the future. It's a deterrent for me to come into and operate a business. I want other businesses beside me that understand it's commercial.
I agree, I think it's gonna make it a much harder sell to convince anybody to locate a business down in that area, if you've still got it zoned for subdivisions.
Possibility, even just a
It's
possibility, it's just a natural deterrent. No, I'm gonna go somewhere else. That I know that I'm not gonna have to put up with neighbors that are complaining about noise I might make after 6 o'clock.
I hear what you're saying, Donna, but I think the comp plan is supposed to represent this vision for what we want for the community. And if we're just saying, you know, the lay of the land is gonna take care of that, I'm not sure that that's what the comp plan is for. We ought to be telling people, not telling them, we ought to be, people ought to be saying, this is what we want in the community, this is where we want development, and that ought to be reflected in the vision for the
oh,
community.
I don't disagree with that, I'm just raising that as a point.
You're right, but-
You know, practically speaking, what's really going to happen here?
That's right, but I think
And
that,
I'm not talking about that as part of the vision. However, what you just said, you know, we want the people to have this as their vision. Well, we heard from some of the people who own that land. That's not their vision.
well, we heard from the specific landowners, I'm not sure that what the community's vision is.
Well, see, that, we run, okay. This becomes the property rights issue again.
All right. Over and over.
And I don't see any way around that. I mean, if there's not one person sitting in this room, unless I'm unaware of something, who owns any of that property. And here we sit making recommendations about what they should and should not be able to do with their land. Now, on the one hand, that's part of the nature of this job.
Correct.
And I guess we all accept that. But I think we need to tread very carefully and very respectfully, considering we have heard from some of those people. And it was not all, yes, by all means, take those rights away from us. You know, I think the lack of the crystal ball that we would all love to have in terms of where am I going to be 20 years from now, what are my needs going to be, it is something that we all need to handle very carefully. Because even if there's one person in that district who in 5 years runs into a problem and needs cash, and we have made it impossible for them to do that, I don't want to live with that. I don't think that's reasonable.
That works both ways, though. I suspect that within the next 5 or 10 years, I will need cash. I will need more cash.
Do it tomorrow.
Yeah. I will need more cash if my taxes are hiked substantially, and if we allow more subdivisions in this area, that's exactly what's going to happen. So I think it's not just the landowner's rights. I think I, as a resident of Arundel, should have some say in this as well. I don't want to allow Joe Blow to put in another subdivision on whatever street it is. If by doing that, I'm going to see another 55 kids in school that we have to pay $6,000 or $7,000 a year for, because I am going to be impacted by it.
I don't think any of us disagree with that. I'm just looking for a way through this that does the least damage to the fewest people and has the most benefit to the most people, I guess. Obviously, there has to be compromise. I think maybe we want to play with that word subdivision more than anything else here. But, perhaps option 2, by providing
Tweaking
a
that.
carrot and then at least a smaller stick, maybe that solves that problem. Dot?
I agree, respectful, and by no means I don't want to be the bad guy, but you're never going to please everybody in a room. That's just the nature of it. This is speaking from somebody that my husband's ancestors' lands was taken by eminent domain with a railroad track and CMP barreling right down the middle of it. You can't stop some things, and you're never going to please everybody in a room. And you can't, when you're talking about, when we asked, number 1, before we go to the planning board, and the percentage of people, take the percentage of people that we've heard from, it's still a small factor. And I'm hearing not even one of them was adamantly against it. They had different, I think it's an understanding type factor, correct me if I'm wrong. Or, I mean, if it's one out of all the landowners, I don't think that I can vote not to go forward with the wording.
Right?
Well, I was going to say, there was some discussion about giving people a timeline, if I recall, on their land, what they wanted to do with that. And like 5 years, you have 5 years, you can decide if you want to keep it residential or you want to make it commercial. You have that, that envelope time there for you. But I don't know where that discussion went or if that's a possibility. And again, I mean, I totally sympathize, believe me, I totally sympathize with investing and having your land become either worthless or not what you think you can get for it. But at times, you have to kind of make a decision, I mean, I think what I heard from the people was, and rightfully so, hey, if I can sell a commercial, I'll get the money, I'm good with that. If I can sell a residential, I'll go with that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of the way I heard their responses were, But that's like, in other words, if you're going to build a business district, to me, and I have to kind of agree with Dot, on one hand, if there's going to be a subdivision right there, people aren't going to build businesses right alongside of that. That's just not going to happen. I mean, if I had a business, I wouldn't be doing that. The whole idea of upstairs and behind or whatever made sense to me, But when we start talking about big tracts of land that are going to be subdivision where we want to get some income from commercial, I just think you're dreaming. It's not going to happen. That's the only thing that bothers me, is that subdivision part. If you want to give them incentives always work for everybody. So I'm all for that. Or again, I guess I have to refer to you. Did they ever talk about this thing about how many years you have?
Yeah, it was rejected.
Rejected.
It was rejected because it was as the board had discussed, 5 years is not the window most of these people were talking anyways.
Okay.
They were talking a window of 10 years, maybe farther out than that. Although probably Tom said they might need it for 5 years. But I mean, they said the 5 year wasn't enough of a window. That emergencies come up, and so they wanted to have it for emergency purposes. So that was kind of rejected. So they didn't proceed. What basically was that the residential component would phase out after 5 years, which wasn't a bad idea, but it gave people a chance to do something now. But subdivisions cost money.
A lot of
It
money.
costs a lot of money. And it's not like you have it growing on trees. You have a plan to actually pay for your soft costs by selling a lot immediately or pre-selling a lot. So
It seems like, subdivision, the word subdivision seems to be a major sticking point. I know it may not be grammatically correct, but that phrase where it says residential uses will be permitted, including single family, multifamily, and could we make that like mixed use subdivisions? To try and clarify, so that way it's not just meaning a strict residential subdivision.
What if we just went back to the language we had in the first place, which was residential uses, both single and multifamily, that are part of a mixed-use project will be permitted. In addition, single-family dwellings will be permitted, but new single-family subdivisions will be excluded.
I'm good with that.
And then we had a sentence that drove Tom over the edge that he was gonna do something with because it wasn't.
Well, that's because subdivisions, I thought everybody here was thinking subdivision means just dividing the lot. And I'm saying that, if I'm reading that, doing what I do every day, I'm saying that subdivision means something else. And, I think most people would read it that way. Dividing a lot's much different than then that's, I would say, I can't even have a family subdivision, which would be exempt under the subdivision statute.
Right.
So, that went a long way. But, to say that you can't have a subdivision as defined by, Title 30A for 4406, whatever in the world it is,
Yeah, it is 4406.
is that right?
Yeah, it is.
Remember.
That's
Right. That's why we love that.
But, just, even if you say that's what we're talking about, the statutory subdivision, okay? No parcel of land, 5 years. I mean, people can still develop the land over 5 years. People do, they wait 5 years,
They
lot
can
out.
still do it to family members.
They still do, they have exemptions there, so we're
But
only
it's
talking
the
about.
subdivision coming in,
Right.
15 houses.
Well, one
Yeah.
thing, always understand one thing about a subdivision. Subdivision, when we say that a family division is exempt, it's exempt only from subdivision review. It still has to meet all the zoning standards.
Right.
And that's, you still have to build the road to town standards.
Yeah.
So
You
what?
still have to divide it in,
Right.
well, it's,
We're not defining that
a
here.
lot of people
That's not our
mistake
job.
that.
Yeah, right.
Think that
No,
They
but-
actually think, oh, geez, I'm gonna sit down at the kitchen table here and cut up
No,
my
and-
land, and they do that, and whoa, surprise.
no, and for me, that's a good compromise, because number one, they would still have to do that today.
Exactly.
That's no different. And I can live with single-family, multifamily, and the subdivisions that don't include, if you have multiple family members that are gonna get a lot. I can live without putting the subdivision in there. But taking away all building is, my concern is, it won't fly at town meeting. It doesn't always matter what we want in this meeting. I've been through several of these comp plans, and when you take it to town meeting, all you need is to have one person say, they're gonna take away my rights and yours is gonna be next, and you won't get any of it. So I would rather get the good part of it than lose it all.
If we took from tonight's draft, the sentence, residential uses will be permitted including single-family, multifamily, and subdivisions out. And we put in its place what we had originally, residential uses, both single and multifamily, that are part of a mixed-use project will be permitted. In addition, single-family dwellings will be permitted, but new single-family subdivisions will be excluded. Now, should we say subdivisions, parentheses, as defined by statute?
Yep.
Okay. And then we had an additional sentence, which was owners of existing lots of record shall have the right to build one single-family dwelling, but family lot divisions will be excluded. I don't know what we want to do with
I
that.
don't think we need it,
Exclude it.
but we don't need it, I don't think we need it.
Okay.
Just to understand that, we're back to mandating planned mixed unit development districts, which is the planning board hates for some reason. I don't know why.
And
then-
including that.
And then we keep the incentive piece.
Yeah.
Well, okay, what do you mean by incentives?
Right.
What I had on the draft.
Whatever you mean by it.
Those residential uses that are part of a mixed-use project will qualify for inclusion in an incentive plan linking residential density to parcel area dedicated. Plan 3,
Okay, I could do that.
that's what this says, correct?
Yeah, yeah,
Because it's based on parcel area
Yeah.
and a proportion thereof.
yeah.
Because what it does is it gives them an incentive to put more of it into commercial than the
Then into
residential.
residential.
Well, that's what all the PMUD stuff does, it always has a ceiling of, let's say, 40% residential, 60% commercial, whatever. But it's gotta be, and that's where you get, when it's a planned project, that's when the residential and commercial can work better, because putting my residential over here, and putting my commercial, I'm putting my retail in between, and then I'm putting my industrial over here, so there's a separation of uses there. And it works as a unit. Of course, understand that PMUDs, big ones, good ones, usually involve a lot of land, 50 or more acres. I'm thinking of a successful one. Okay. Let's go outside of me. St. Louis, they've got residential there, don't they? They've got some residential in the back. Ah, maybe they never sold it. Maybe they sold it.
Let's say hello to a world.
Yeah, Southport. Yeah, I know that Southborough never exercised their residential component. They had one.
They have it in New Hampshire.
Oh, yeah, they have it in New Hampshire, they have it in Connecticut, they have it in
There's a
Massachusetts.
big course, and then they have all the houses.
Yeah, they have the houses, and they have a commercial center, and then they have a couple of industrial lots, and it's all mixed up. It's all planned out, so it fits. It's
And-
not
and that-
hodgepodge.
That would also allow some of these landowners who have smaller parcels to pool their resources. So one developer could come in and buy up several landowners' parcels, do something big, and that makes it very relatively easy for those smaller landowners to get the cash they want for their land.
Right. However, if we do have if we have the loophole for for non-statutory subdivisions, assuming nobody's gonna carve anything into 40-acre lots, then they still can carve out a piece for a commercial, but they still can cut up pieces in there on a 5-year incremental basis or give it to family members who have to wait another 5 years before they can sell it. So, we're looking at a 5-year window before anybody can flip these things. Or they march along at 5.
And in that time, if the commercial builds up, then the chances are they're not gonna flip it for residential, they're gonna flip it for commercial.
And frankly, in most cases, as I said, some of these lots are just, you're not gonna do an incremental 5-year march with a road because it's just too damn expensive to do that. Your house lot's worth $80,000, the road costs $100,000 to build. Each section costs another $50,000 or whatever. So it costs that much for 200 feet, but, no, that is an option. You kick it over the planning board and say, make it work. So the incentive is mixed use. Do a mixed use community. You can do commercial by itself. If you get residential, to get a higher rate of residential. Well, no, you're basically saying, we're keeping the lot sizes.
That's what I'm saying, what are we doing with lot size?
What are we gonna do with lot sizes? Because one side of the road is 1 acre and one side of the road is 2 acres. That's the problem. Make it all 2 acre?
Well, whatever, it would seem to me that once the zone is established, whatever's in that zone is whatever the lot size is that the planning board recommends. So make it all 1 acre, make it all 2 acre, regardless of what side of the road you're on today, doesn't matter. You're in a new zone tomorrow.
Where does the incentive come in there?
Yeah.
Well, that's the planning board's job. That's the nice thing about this committee. We can say do this, and they have to figure out how.
You know that can you're kicking down the road hits me in the head.
When you look at it though, isn't the greater percentage in the lot area?
Yeah, the greater percentage of this is in the DB2, in the 2 acre lots.
So why wouldn't
Yeah.
you just make it, go with the higher, whatever has the higher percentage and just make it all uniform?
Yeah, I would think
That's
so too.
more or less what the planning board did with their option that they exercised. They made it all 2. So it's not like we're going in a direction that they haven't already blazed. So, and as you said, they're gonna have to grapple with that issue. They already have. They've already said it's 2 acre. So they'll have to answer the Stricklands and all the rest of the folks on the other side of the road.
So do we have something we can live with to recommend back to the planning board? Okay.
So is that gonna be DB
We're gonna.
2, option 3?
Option three, it'll be option only,
Yeah.
with revised language by tomorrow morning. Because they meet Thursday night.
Right.
So, now, when we started this discussion, what the planning board had voted for was what you see there as option 1, which just opened it up to residential. So,
No restrictions.
I think, with respect to Mr. Bell and his arguments for only commercial, we have made some progress.
Oh, that's right. You must take into consideration the vote was 4-3 vote.
Correct,
Which is precisely why I brought this up.
correct. Yep.
Yeah.
That's
So there is
Because
a,
they asked us to do something, we did it, and then they contradicted themselves. So that didn't seem to me to be something we should ignore.
Next, then I would send it back and say, no, this is what we want. Make it work.
If everybody's happy with that,
Yeah.
or this is what we think is right now in the best interest and what people will.
We think we can.
No conflicts
justify
against
this.
the community.
Really?
No conflicts. Planning board, this is what you need to do in order to be in compliance with it. See, if you get this passed, the planning board doesn't do this, you're not in compliance with the conflict.
That's correct.
If the comp plan doesn't count, you don't change zoning at all.
That's true, and all of this will be for absolutely nothing.
Not. Yep.
Mhm.
So you just erase the word and
Yep.
start over.
Right.
Take some more sedatives and, you know, pretend you're British and aim lower.
Okay, well, we've almost gotten through A.
Did you want to read that into the record, or,
You're gonna,
Let me read it one more time.
so you take?
you're gonna give us a little confidence, right?
Yeah, I'll type it up and I'll shoot it out by email. Okay, the DB2 district will permit small, medium, and large, 100,000 square feet, scale wholesale, retail, office, and service uses, as well as community uses and low-impact manufacturing. Residential uses, both single and multifamily, that are part of a mixed-use project will be permitted. In addition, single-family dwellings will be permitted, but new single-family subdivisions, as defined by statute, will be excluded. Those residential uses that are part of a mixed-use project will qualify for inclusion in an incentive plan linking residential density to parcel area dedicated to commercial uses, thus encouraging a greater proportion of commercial development than residential development.
Do we have to have a motion? Do we
I'm
have to vote on
just
that?
gonna say I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
I'll second.
All those in favor of that language? That would be unanimous.
Could I, again, I was just thinking about something I was paying no attention. Who made the motion?
Philip?
Phil made the
Diane
motion,
seconded.
and who seconded?
Diane.
Diane means, you give me that language, because I didn't copy it.
I'll email it to you as well as.
Point of order here, one thing. Tom, PUD is a subdivision by definition.
Not a residential subdivision.
You say residential subdivision?
Residential subdivision as defined by.
Okay,
Okay.
yep, sounds good to me.
Yeah, we said new single-family subdivisions will be excluded.
Residential, should say residential in there.
So instead of single-family, we say new residential subdivisions? Okay.
Is that take another vote?
Do we need to make a motion to amend it?
Sure.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Okay. Starting to look like we know what we're doing here.
That only took it.
That's-
Yes, but better to have the discussions,
It
better to
takes
have the
6 months.
discussions before or after.
At the
Then
planning
after.
board takes it.
Okay, the other thing that we have is item A on our agenda is to just take what I'm hoping will be a quick look at the permitted and conditional uses for DB2, which Tad was nice enough to hand us earlier. And this was, again, because a couple of you had spoken to me and mentioned in passing, gee, I don't know if they had this on the list or that on the list. So if you have any suggestions for anything the planning board might have missed, we can pass that on to them and make their life on Thursday night even more thrilling than it will be otherwise.
I'm still not being specific on banks.
Service, commercial services. It's in the definition for commercial service. I should have given you the
Okay.
definitions too.
Okay. Just want to make sure.
Oh, trust me, I want a bank. I'd like to say also banks, I would love to put in there, banks that build in Arundel and therefore will get the town's accounts as a result. Don't think the selectmen would like that.
Is that another incentive?
I would call that an incentive, other people call that larceny.
I could be convinced.
Okay, one vote.
There you go. Well, if you can explain how eminently legal it is, I'm sure the other 4 selectmen will go right along with you.
It's an incentive program.
Yeah.
We encourage everybody to use businesses here in town. Why shouldn't the town?
True. Use local vendors.
That's what exactly meant.
State of Maine's supposed to do that, or do.
Churches
I wanna
and
know why they're
parish
not
houses
taxing all
are
those
tax
people for
exempt,
using
are
their
they
cars
really
outside the
prime
city?
candidates for building in?
Should they be?
Probably not, but they might be part of the, they might go in there. One thing you can say about those things is, yes, they are tax exempt. Usually the land they consume is very small, and it's part of the community fabric to have them in there. It's like saying we don't want any schools in this area. It's,
Well, you get right to the point, don't you?
you know, because I thought a lot about it. It was a topic of discussion. We thought quite a bit about it.
About what, I missed it.
Churches and parishes.
Churches and parish halls basically.
Let's not have that discussion.
That's another
They
discussion.
can afford to build $2
That's not even part of
million
38.
residences.
So, but, you know, the idea is it's part of the community fabric.
Plus, they
That's
will
social.
track the pubs and taverns.
They do.
Probably.
They always
Go
use
to
their
Saturday night mass
parking
and
lots
drink
for
later.
And the taverns are already conditional, right?
Yeah.
Question though, marinas,
Yeah.
is it because we plan on flooding a section of the road?
We have waterfront.
Along the river, which is relatively shallow.
Actually, I
I
don't think it's even shallow. I think it's all bedrock right through that one little stretch. Yeah, marinas is always, I don't know how that got in there,
Let's leave it in there.
really.
What do we have on the
High tide.
Where?
Yeah,
What do they call the place where they store the boats? Number one.
something
Oh,
really.
Is that a marina?
That's marine services.
Services.
That's a commercial.
I think the
service.
marina actually requires water.
Okay.
Yeah, I
But if
I
somebody
would
wants to
agree with
build
that. That's a very good point. I have no idea how
That's right.
marine
That'll
is.
get the wet them up.
I'm not really sure how marine
Use
is.
some of the wetland.
Right.
Dig a hole. let
Might
it
be in
go.
there now, and that's why we stay.
I mean, if there's any shallow, I mean, if there's a place that's deep enough for a marina along the river, it's gonna be above the dam
Yeah,
by Route 1.
yeah.
That's not gonna take you too far.
No, but we can portage.
Just a note of
Taking
clarification.
into account the global warming.
Just a note of clarification, you have automobile vehicle repair facilities, you're specific about that.
Yes.
But then you have watercraft and recreational vehicle sales, but you don't have anything about service.
I think in the definition, it had servicing built into it,
Okay,
but it's a good point. I will check and make sure service is part of that. That is number,
4,
that's at the,
number
that's,
4.
Well, watercraft and recreational vehicles are considered automobiles.
not in zone. We're different. But you're right, they're vehicles.
From strictly a wordsmithing standpoint, yep. Since marina seems to be kind of a silly thing under permitted, could we at least make that conditional? The condition being we have to have enough water.
You know,
Things that are
I
conditional
don't
are
know why
because
it's
there's
in there.
conditions
Honestly,
around
this
it.
has been going on for almost 2 years now, and I have no idea what that's doing there anymore. I think it was copied from,
But it does say, under definition of marinas, it can be, besides it's a dock or a basin providing moorings, also offering supply, repair, and other facilities.
Okay.
Right, so even though I don't know what it's called, it really kind of is a marina.
So a marina can
But
be not
That would fall
water.
under number 4.
yeah.
Yep.
Correct.
Well, it won't hurt to have it in there.
I think it hurts me.
Always good for a laugh.
The other,
Good for a laugh, and maybe, you know, you never know, maybe kayaks will put in right at the day.
well, a
Go right over
facility,
to the edge
Well, I
there.
mean, down by Durrell's Bridge, that's where they used to build boats.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Will do.
Even
Still
further
there.
out than
Yeah.
that.
Well,
They don't want
I mean,
you there.
they're on the other side of
do
the
we
river
have
now,
boat building here?
but they used to build the boats right there on the river.
No, we don't have boat building, but I would put that probably in the low impact manufacturing.
In the what?
Low impact manufacturing.
Do we want to have a separate thing called boat building? That's an interesting.
Well,
Would that
don't
be-
we already
would that be
have a
considered also
facility in
education?
town that builds boats?
Yes, we do, but it's not in this district.
It's a school.
I know, but what if, say hypothetically, they should outgrow their current facility and want to move somewhere else.
Or Sabre
When
Yacht,
this- when this-
Sabre Yachts wants to move from Raymond down to here.
I'm just trying to make sure that we don't, because if you have to take this back to town meeting to get that change, these people are gonna go buy something someplace else while they're waiting.
Yeah.
So this is our opportunity to ensure that the things that we think would fit within this area are truly there.
All right, I'll give it some thought. I will take a look at it carefully and see if it fits in some other niche. But if
And there was
not, I'll
something
put
else
it
I
in
was
here as
thinking about.
watercraft.
What was the other one I was thinking about?
But I will put boat building, because I know that issue is also gonna come up in, Townhouse Corner District.
And I know that it's agriculture and use, but say hypothetically something like backyard farms. Because these are pretty good-sized parcels.
Hey, guess what? Agriculture's not in here. Wow, what happened?
I don't know, you tell me, since they said that that's our biggest niche, and you didn't mention it at all.
I didn't write that report.
But not all of us believe.
We've got garden centers, so.
No, but that's not the same as
It's
agriculture.
not the same, under definition, it's not the
No.
same, that one I know.
Yeah, agriculture is, I mean, that would
If
really certainly make two marijuana facilities.
If you're going
go
to do
on.
that, make it agriculture and aquaculture.
Yes.
We had agriculture in here. I don't, boy,
Where do you
It's
have
gone.
it?
no, we had it, it's gone. It's right now in the district, by the way. Yeah, it's in both this district and it's in the in the BI. Oh, it is in this one, because we had a limit. It's right now in the BI district, agriculture. Good point. Thank you. See, this is producing good results.
Because we have such a good committee.
Yes. No, that's good.
So you took both of them, agriculture and aquaculture?
I put them together. How about smelting? Just thinking, what are we missing?
Oh, no, they just sent somebody to prison for not claiming all of his income.
What, smelting?
Well,
Oh, Elvers. Oh, really?
yeah, you
I
overdid it.
didn't see that.
I have no idea how they proved that they made all that money, but he has to pay all the taxes on it, he's going to the hooch jail.
Yeah,
He
that's
lost
nice.
his license.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
for
the
one
first thing.
season.
Oh,
What?
only for
He goes
one
to jail, but he loses his license for one season?
I think that's what it said, was one season.
Wait a second.
No, I think it really did.
He's not going to jail for that long.
No,
Oh, 60 days.
I think it's the tax money they wanted from the whatever.
It's always the tax money.
I have a
If
question.
you're a jerk about it, that's when you go to prison.
How broad is the definition for agriculture?
Very broad.
Extremely broad?
Well, let's take a look at it. I don't think I've modified it.
What do you
from the
have
last
in
time?
Or what do you not wanting to have?
Well, no, you could have a fly farm.
Oh, God, yes, I remember that.
Well, it just comes to
I
mind.
had that
Don't-
discussion.
don't- okay. But, you take waste material and you feed maggots, and the maggots then are used as a food source for other things like fish.
It's manufactured.
And you're raising fish as a food source for people.
Cultivation of soil, producing or raising crops, including gardening as a commercial operation. The term shall also include greenhouses, nurseries, and versions thereof, but not forest management or timber harvesting activities.
So that would not cover a fly farm.
No,
Or a
farm's
fish,
out.
or a fish farm.
No, because aquaculture is in here.
Well, aquaculture would cover a fish farm, but not a fly farm.
Aquaculture has not been approved yet. Aquaculture is a separate
The
set
whole
of
town
definitions that I've written.
Is it skill?
Have here.
Didn't-
It's another big one.
My mother was against the fact that I haven't seen it in the house all year.
Oh, we have a definition for aquaculture too, and it doesn't include flies, I'm sorry.
But my point is,
Does it?
not that we need a special definition for fly farming, because it will probably never happen.
Or worm cultivation.
Precisely.
That's
Perhaps-
livestock.
Perhaps, how many animal units? Don't go
It's
there.
not gardening.
Perhaps our definition of agriculture, because of the current state of technology, needs to be significantly broadened. So it's not limited to, how much corn can you put in that field?
Well, it
Because-
is limited to plant growth right now, because we also have animal husbandry.
Well, then you can probably put fly farming under animal.
We could, and I'm sure you could make the animal unit limit, although it's only 5 in this area, that means you could
That's a
only
lot of
have-
worms.
That's really, what, 10,000?
That's
5
2.5
tons.
tons of worms.
Yeah. Which isn't that bad.
I don't know that that's a good use for land in the DB, so just.
But-
Agriculture?
Agriculture. yeah.
But no, the agriculture that I'm talking about isn't outdoors. It's a-
But
it's in a
somebody
facility.
would walk in, if you say agriculture will be allowed and you put agriculture in, you might not be thinking about that, but somebody will walk in and say, I'm gonna put my sheep farm down there.
That's true, or my pig farm.
Yeah, and then, you know, if the whole point of this is to try to increase non-residential taxes, you're not gonna get much out of it.
Then I go back to my point that we need a different definition for what I'm talking about. It's not traditional agriculture. It is raising, you know, plants and/or animals or some combination thereof in an indoor facility that is very high tech.
Yeah, that's a greenhouse that's in this.
I mean, backyard farm employs a lot of people.
Yes, it does.
But I mean, it could be, you could raise algae, which has a ton of uses. Yeah. So it is all sorts of
We don't need
possibilities.
But we are
greenhouses.
not doing the defining in this
Well,
process,
no,
are we?
we're not, but we're making suggestions to the planning board not to.
But
open
that's
up.
what the R4 district is for. Right?
Potentially, yes.
And that's one of the things that we,
But if I came along with a ton of money and I said, okay, I want to open up a 100,000 square foot facility and raise earthworms, and I'm going to have, you know, a
See
bazillion
your
dollars
pro
worth
forma.
of, bazillion dollars worth of equipment that I'm going to have to pay personal property taxes
no,
on,
you'll get a Betty
you're going to turn me away?
exemption on it. Am I gonna turn you away? No.
Okay.
I haven't turned away anybody.
Well,
I
sometimes,
tried to discourage the
sometimes
marijuana.
it's not turning them away. Sometimes it's making it
Difficult.
too difficult for them to want to come.
Well, that's what the planning board's for.
Yeah, but our planning board has actually been pretty good on that. They really have. They really streamlined the process of this.
What if somebody wanted to put a truck terminal in, would that be covered under any of these
No, that's
things?
in the DB1. It's not DB1, it's in the UPI district, that's what truck terminals are. We have discussed that.
I noticed on the list, we got number 29, residential uses are underlined, and then 30 is crossed out.
That will need to be fixed.
That needs to be
Well, that'll
done in
have to
such
be
a way
fixed,
as to.
subject to these changes.
Okay.
But I can't do that until the planning board agrees.
I understand, I just
So
pointed it out.
I will add your suggestions in here and underline those. And then highlight the residential and say, gentlemen, guess what, square one again. But you've done this so often, it should be holding hat to you, so, you know.
Okay. Does anybody have anything else on that, so we can move on?
Thank you for your suggestions.
You broaden that agriculture.
Okay, item B was to revise proposed comprehensive plan language for DB2 as needed, we kind of did that, so we're all set. And then review any other planning board changes to proposed ordinance regarding DB1 townhouse corner or gateway districts. I assume they have changed nothing on DB1
Nothing.
and gateway
Gateway hasn't been written yet.
nowhere.
Oh, no, I just haven't had time to write that.
Yeah. However, townhouse corner,
DB2.
you gave us a copy of that.
Yeah, I gave you townhouse corner.
Is there anything that you think
I think
we
the issue that's still.
take a look at there?
Yeah, I mean, the issue in there that you didn't have in your statement, you talked about mixed uses, and something came up that I crossed out in the copy there. It's the only section, the only thing that's crossed out, that was the commercial parking lots. And that was an issue that wasn't really resolved at the last meeting, but it was brought up, and I think it was talked about at the workshop. And they didn't come to a real resolution, they were just like, that was the answer. It was, we gotta do better than that. I need better than And that, the idea of the commercial parking lot was, I think, one of the big issues that came up in the public hearing, or the public workshop on the townhouse corner. That was the only thing where it got a big, from the residents, I think. as well. And that, so it's still something that I would ask this board to consider and to give some sort of perspective to the planning board on. And that's the issue of, there have been some suggestions to do commercial parking lots down.
Buses.
For buses and RVs, yeah. So there would basically be parking lots for the traffic that
For
goes
Kennebunk
up Dot
Court?
Square. Yeah, for Kennebunk. Yeah. Now, naturally, there's a tendency on our part to say, why should we be in that position to park their vehicles?
And they're gonna charge them like big bucks for parking there?
Well, understand that yeah, they probably would, but we're only gonna assess them for pavement. We're not income-based assessing.
It's a waste of space. Let them-
Well, I think also the other issue was,
That
Unless
may
you
leave
go,
those
like,
buses
a
running, I'm not
concession
sure that we
place
want
where they
to,
can get-
people in those
People
neighborhoods
get off the
have
bus,
to
they
handle all
get
those
food,
foods.
soda.
I think they were looking more at just the place with the buses to drop them down in Dot Square and then park them back up here.
No,
Yeah, I don't know if you'll ever see any, I don't know if you'll ever see the people on the bus, Sean. I think the bus goes to Kennebunk Court, drops
Drops them
everybody
off,
off to
brings
one
their
around
fumes
down
and
there.
And he comes
everything
and
here.
waits for
He
them
comes
to,
and waits,
and then
yeah.
goes back. I think that was one of the things. The other was the trolley service, was looking for a place to store their trolleys. I think that was the other issue. The Kennebunk Port trolley, or the Kennebunk trolley service was looking for a place they could store their trolleys overnight. But that was, they don't have a place. They were looking for that down in that area, so that was another business opportunity that was discussed, which is part of the commercial parking lots. But I have not written the definition of a commercial parking lot because that's everything. I mean, to me, I've written that definition for Old Orchard Beach, and believe me, that's a bigger definition than what we want to talk about. Yeah, I think we're talking about something that's very limited use definition for a parking lot. And the issue is, what fits in this situation? It's kind of contraindicator to the direction we were going with this district.
Well,
Seems to
I
be
was
a
just
little-
looking at how we define the uses for Townhouse Corner.
Yeah.
And it says the Townhouse Corner District will permit small-scale retail, office, service, and community uses, as well as single and multifamily dwellings. Mixed-use projects will also be permitted. Now, I would think that would fall under service, if any of those,
Yeah,
but small-scale, we kind of discussed Townhouse Corner as a relatively small, intimate, little shops, little things going on, and, 2 acres of buses doesn't do that for me. But,
I agree with you.
Yeah.
well, I think that was, yeah, I'm not sure the planning board's buying into that either. That's the unknown section in this whole, district is what to do about this, this question. Now, if it's an associated use, if you're parking vehicles that are associated with use, let's say, if Trolley decided they were gonna have, we're gonna put our administrative offices here, and we're gonna park our trolleys in the back overnight, we're gonna shield them and so forth.
that's different.
I think that's different.
And I
It's an
think
associated use.
the other thing that you just raised, what's the advantage to Arundel to get relatively little tax revenue to park
look at
somebody
their
else's
fumes.
buses, and we pick up the pollution and the traffic and the wear and tear, and,
The only way we could do that is deal with the, is change our assessing formula.
I don't see
Parking
we're
lots, I'm
gaining
not sure the
much.
selectmen are gonna do that. Just for
I
that
don't
one use.
make the parking facility indoor.
Oh, there you go.
That's a good
Wow,
one.
that would certainly limit the size.
Oh, I guess it would.
Oh, yeah.
So, no, if we're gonna go for it, let's go something about 5 stories.
Yeah. Get some tax dollars out of that.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I'm not
$15,000
I'm not
a
looking
space.
to have parking lots, because that kind of defeats the purpose, I think. I don't think that's where we were heading.
I don't think we're heading that way either.
I don't see anything visually appealing about it either.
I do have one question under townhouse, and maybe I'm just being, why did we do garden centers and agricultural use in why are we excluding medical marijuana?
Who is that?
I don't,
I mean,
Number 14.
the states voted to legalize it. For
And you have
medical
people who
marijuana.
could choose to be a provider who would be
Yeah.
doing production, so you're saying no one in that area can do that, right?
yeah, well, we can't now anyways. Well, actually, anywhere where there's agriculture, they can do it.
Right, but this says,
This is
it says excluding medical marijuana production. I don't know why we would do that.
I don't know why that was in there.
And I'm not saying that I want us to become medical marijuana, but I also, if you have a good company that comes in and it's legal for medicinal uses,
Tax dollars right there.
yeah,
We got several other ones. Well, we're talking about caregiver level. Which is.
no, it says garden centers and agricultural uses excluding medicinal marijuana production. Production is not growing it just for yourself.
Yeah,
Production
no,
is-
well, the caregiver isn't either. All the ones that we have been caregiver levels.
Right, but when I'm looking at this excluding medicinal marijuana production, that's telling me that it's on a larger scale and it,
And we don't want to permit it. That's what we're saying.
Rather
We're saying
than-
on a larger scale, we do not want to permit.
Yeah, we'd rather have it in the DB2.
okay,
than the DB1.
that's why. Okay, that's what I was looking for. I was looking for why it was,
I mean, we could do caregiver, if we want to do the definition of caregiver level, we could do it there, because that's what we have so far, caregivers, which is six person, 6 plants per person, which is 36 plants, which is
okay.
still much more than.
Okay, well, that helps me to understand as to why that was there. So this area.
Yeah, and I have made a distinction between a production and a,
Okay.
quite frankly, the caregiver. Right now, production is licensed by the state and limited in the licenses. I believe there's, 13 or 14 licenses or something?
Right, so that
They're very
belongs,
limited.
so that belongs in permitted uses under 2, right?
But it isn't there.
That's not there.
But it's not there.
We're in GB2?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not there. It's just under agriculture.
Or it
Yeah,
just
but
says
we don't
garden
have any
centers.
agriculture.
We
in
are
it.
now.
But again,
But you didn't.
Oh, John's saying, maybe we don't. But
I think it's an awful broad term. to put in
agriculture, well,
DB2.
it's, remember, it's
I don't
growing
think
of
it's
crops.
suitable.
Animal husbandry is not in there. And animal husbandry is livestock. It's concerned about sheep, it's concerned with horses, quite frankly, no, there's plenty. We got 22
There
square
was-
miles more than you can put horses in. And
No,
I gotta
I'm
put them
not,
here.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about large-scale greenhouses,
Yeah,
those types of things. That's the type of agriculture I'm talking about in DB2.
And just
But-
include your definition exclusion for, specifically exclude animal husbandry and source tax.
yeah. Well,
Define it to
this is
start.
gonna be, this is gonna be an omitted uses when we, actually, this is not going in not as omitted uses, so I'm gonna have to put that in the definition, because I can't, this needs to be stitched in as a performance standard.
Mhm.
And so I can't say it's an omitted use, because anything else in all the other districts that's not specified then would not be allowed. So, you're right.
Just make sure
I'm
the
gonna amend
definition is- Broad enough, and then under this, just make sure that it, I don't know if it wants to say, I think it has to be worded a little bit differently on the townhouse in order to allow it for caregivers, but not to do it on large-scale production.
Okay, let me put that in.
And there's gotta be a definition under the state.
What we could do is just say limited, medical marijuana production limited to caregiver,
this is 14.
yeah, caregivers.
And just make sure that you put the opposite language in the other one,
Yeah.
please. Okay.
The opposite language in what?
She means
DB2?
DB2.
Yeah, agriculture. And animal husbandry, I'm gonna have to, I'll put in that, I'll change that definition to say it does not include animal husbandry.
Under
And under townhouse, the recreational facilities, is there anything in there that makes it so that they're, because some of these I don't know what you're talking about recreational facilities, I don't know if you're talking about dirt bike tracks or,
Can we-
well, is there some kind of a thing that makes it so that they can't impact? I mean, because this is.
Well, motorized, and you bring in a very good point, because it's something that we haven't discussed was motorized. Remember, the DB2, we're looking at amusement parks, which will include motorized everything, so.
Right, but I will warn you, we had an issue with DB2 when wanting to bring in a dirt track. Dirt bikes and four-wheelers and three-wheelers and that flew like pigs. But in this townhouse corner, I see that as a much smaller
Yeah.
scale and,
I put, that should be a conditional use, it seems to me, given where we are. You ought to have some review, hours about, all the usual stuff that you'd have in a conditional use application. You're gonna have that kind of,
We're gonna have to write some standards.
right.
yeah,
Wait, make it.
oh well, then don't put it in.
Oh, getting a lot of pressure to get this one.
No, then don't put the recreational facility.
Well,
We want that.
it's a very broad title, you're right, but maybe non-motorized recreational facilities.
Or low impact.
That's gonna require even more
Broad
definition.
definition. Yeah, do recreational facilities, comma, non-motorized.
Right. It's a good point, thank you for bringing it up.
You already got the bike shop down there, right?
Yeah, he's retail. He's in that district, but he would be under retail, and he's less than 5,000 square feet.
Right, the one thing I'm trying to avoid is somebody trying to put in a four-wheeler or dirt bike track on their 5 acres next to 15 homes.
Luckily,
That will cause somebody
nobody's
to
got 5 acres
flip out.
in our district.
I was
Just going back to
But you're right,
being
you're right.
hypothetical.
Just going back to agriculture for a minute.
Sure.
And then the DB2, if we exclude agriculture in the DB2, if somebody wants to do like 50 acres of corn, are we gonna allow that?
Well, I'll tell you, if he's gonna cut all those trees down, and grub it, plow it under, he's gotta really be committed to corn.
So there are, what you're saying is there are no sizable lots in that area which would just be wasted on.
No, the land's not really.
The land's not that, first of all, the land's lousy for corn, because it's pretty wet.
The other thing is you can't really do corn year right,
Right,
year after year
You
after
might
year
have a
after
chance
year.
with sod, but we've already had 2 sod farms forward, so, it has been down in our 4th district, so, 1 sod farm, a change. So,
With corn, they usually try to rotate their crops because it's really rough on the land.
Well,
And you
yeah,
need to-
what I'm getting at is if you're going to include agriculture in the DB2, it just occurs to me that it's not a real good fit. If we're talking about the type of agriculture that Donna was talking about with worm farms and greenhouses and one thing and another, all well and good, we get a little bit of tax revenue out of it. If we're going to allow agriculture in that DB2, I think we're leaving ourselves wide open.
But Tad, you said that agriculture is a very, very broad.
well, it's actually very narrow.
Oh.
It's the growing of plant material,
Okay.
that's what it is.
Act,
Worms don't count,
no, worms
they're
would
the
not
wrong
be,
phylum.
they would not be
Wrong kingdom,
agriculture,
in fact.
they would be animal husbandry if you broaden that definition a lot, because they're animals, they're not plants.
Right, exactly.
However, I think we have a little danger we have to watch here with regards to agriculture. Once upon a time, and Tom and Diane will both remember this, I think, the previous comprehensive plan, there was a rumor going around town, which was completely unfounded, but it was that the comp plan was going to prevent you from having a backyard garden if you lived on Route
Yep.
1.
Yes.
And
Oh,
it got
man.
rather exciting.
Oh,
So if you're not going to put, and again, this depends upon how you're defining agriculture, but if in any of these districts you say no agriculture, and there are residences there, and somebody wants to grow tomatoes and a few peppers, they're going to interpret that as I can't have my garden. And
Commercial.
I know that's,
Commercial's not good enough either.
of all the big buttons in Arundel, that's one of them.
oh, yeah. And while most of the land in this area wouldn't sustain the type of agriculture I think you're thinking about, there are some areas that have some really large organic farms that employ a lot of people and sell a lot of produce. I'm not saying it's a fit for that area, but a lot of these groups are now moving indoors.
You know, that's a whole different ball of wax. The indoor gardening concept, regardless, or the indoor growing concept, regardless of what you're growing, beast or fowl or fish, that's a tax revenue producer for us. I agree with John, we don't want to see DB2 all grown up in rice, respecting the wetlands.
It's
Might
actually
be
a
good use
terrible
for it.
impact on the
We can use it for something fun.
However, we also don't want to say you can't do agriculture because of the
They will
backyard
come
garden.
on.
The other point, just not by means of arguing with you, but just a point. If, let's say I own 20 acres in DB2 today, and I happen to have enough field where I'm going to raise some crops. Agriculture is not a permanent impact or restriction on that land. So next year I could turn around and sell it to some commercial outfit and they can have a building there. So temporarily having the land used agriculturally wouldn't restrict the ultimate commercial development because it's not a permanent situation. So I would rather see the land used agriculturally and generating a little bit of tax revenue than not just lying, fallow and doing nothing. So as an interim step, that might not be a bad thing.
Yeah, well, that's a good point.
Well, somebody's not gonna come in and couldn't afford to buy all that land to plant a bunch of corn. I mean, somebody's not gonna go in there and spend that kind of money and grow corn. It's not profitable.
Right,
So-
right, no, I'm talking about somebody who already owns the land.
But I agree with
They-
you,
They might
yeah.
use that.
So you don't have to worry, I mean, as an aside,
they could do
you don't
that
have to
anyway,
worry
it's their
about
land.
that,
Right.
because they're not going to do that.
Yeah.
So it makes sense.
Be very clear and have your
Okay.
Let me ask you, you guys think we should have a different definition for marijuana production?
Isn't there one defined by the
Medical.
state?
It was by the state, but not by the zoning ordinance.
Or the science medicinal. What is that for medical?
I think we need to research that.
Talking about primary research?
I would think I would think there was probably, would assume there's something written about that, right?
Well, the state level, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Well, there are our neighbors to the north, the Saco and Biddeford, they regulate it very heavily. They regulate it in terms of where you put in a caregiver, and of course, Biddeford does have one of the licenses. There's somebody, wasn't there somebody in Biddeford who was growing it, or was that Portland? They were running into problems because people were getting fused on the second floor. So.
That was
I
a.
think they were complaining.
That was Portland. Yeah, oh yeah.
I think that if
Worker
the,
production fell off.
I think if the state has some kind of a definition of what it is and how they're supposed to store it, how it's supposed to be regulated so that it's not a shop and save, because that's regulated. You have to have a card. There are only certain people that are supposed to have access to it. I think that kind of stuff ought to be in something. You can't, I would say to open it completely up, because that made me a little nervous. But where it did get voted on, and it is legal in the state of Maine, think that if they wanted to put one of their facilities, I mean, they did come here. I mean, they ended up going a bit of it, but they did come and speak to us.
Why couldn't we just defer to state statute? There's gotta be definitions there.
I can't. Right now, we lump it under agriculture. We don't make a distinction between marijuana growing and
It's
tomatoes.
another point.
No, but you could put something in there in accordance with state statute,
Yeah.
so that they have to follow all the rules and regulations that are in the state statute.
Well, they're gonna have to do that anyway.
State, at the state level, we got definitions, and the state regulated by the state, we can regulate it locally as well.
That's the
Right.
point.
Yeah.
I mean, there are places you can say, we don't want this to happen. And that's the point. Are there places that you don't want
More
this
severe
to happen?
restrictions than the state.
Oh, sure.
So if you were to have, if they were to grant 10 more licenses and Arundel gets one, then we would want to specify where that facility was. Because it's not, it's an indoor operation, it's highly, frankly speaking, they're bunkers, to be honest with you, for security purposes.
Yep.
They are built like bunkers, they have incredible security systems. It looks like a prison, basically, a concertina wire on them.
Right, and it belongs in, it really truly does
It does-
belong in
it's
a
an
business,
industrial.
it's an industrial, and
It's
belongs
The
in a
only place
business.
I think it makes sense in this town would be the BI district.
Except it
Well,
might
that's
not
the end
be-
of that.
DB2,
The problem is, Donna, is it might not be big enough, that's the problem. See, some of these
Oh,
are,
it's intensive agriculture. None of them are that big. I think
They're not
the
that big?
largest is
No.
maybe 20,000 square feet, maybe 30,000. They're not that big because they're tiered, and it's all in a grow lights, and they suck electricity like it's.
So you want to be close to power lines, so right along Route 111 corridor, right?
However, Kennebunk Light and Power is down in the DB2 district.
and they're cheap. Way
BI
cheaper.
is, well,
I hate to do this.
let's go back to.
I think we're gonna end this
It's
discussion
not a
rapidly.
task here.
Yeah, Donna's lost her patience.
Well, no, if we need to get stuff done, let's get it done.
Right.
Because we have a deadline, actually.
When are we gonna make it?
All right, so you're gonna play with the agriculture piece,
Yeah,
so we don't upset the backyard gardeners.
right.
Anything
We're gonna
else?
include agriculture, I think, John, you're okay with that?
Oh,
Okay, so agriculture's still in.
Okay.
Thanks for pointing that out, Bob. Yeah, that could have been a disaster, because that was inadvertent mistake. I think what happened was when we rearranged it alphabetically, it got lost in the
And,
shuffle.
I would assume it's also going to be a townhouse corner district for the same reasons.
Yeah. Yeah. It is, right now, isn't it?
I'm not seeing it.
No.
No, I'm not seeing it either. Yeah, there it is, 14.
14.
Oh,
Oh, wow.
Agricultural.
Actually, it should just be agricultural uses, and it should be up top.
Yes.
So get rid of that, put it up top.
Garden center should be okay.
Well, garden centers are included in agriculture, it's part of the definition, even though we have garden centers as another use. I think we put it, garden centers in there as, you see it in downtown business district under number 14,
Yes.
to highlight it. So people who were looking for garden centers didn't see garden centers, so they would know that they could do it in that area. We have garden center in our definitions, even though we have even though nurseries are in an agricultural setting too.
Could we solve that other little agriculture problem in terms of the indoor agriculture by making it garden centers and greenhouses?
Greenhouses are in the definition for agriculture.
Okay, then we're done.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else on townhouse corners that we want to look at? Corner, keep thinking that corner.
now, here, is there, does that fall, the banks fall under professional offices too?
Professional services are not in here, they should be. And commercial services. Or I could just put in banks. Would you like me to just put in banks? I could do a definition for bank, financial institutions.
Well, if it falls under commercial services, why not say commercial services, comma, banks, or something like that, if you want more words there for people to pick it up, but.
Would it make life easier for the planning board and everybody else if there was consistency of language between these two lists?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good.
Yes, very much.
So if we're gonna call it something on one list, we
Yeah.
call it the same.
It's gonna have to
thing
be
on
the
the
same
other.
all the way through.
Yes.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Except for the production of the production.
Well, no, if there's a difference, there can be a difference between the lists.
But if they're the
you're
same,
gonna talk
be
about professional
consistent.
services on one list, then don't call it something else on the other list and mean the same thing.
Yeah, it's professional service.
And if, I know these go in alphabetical order, but it might also be easier too for people if the permitted uses, if they were, if they had the same uses in the same district, if those were listed first and then the ones that were different after.
Or better yet, if they were grouped by type.
I have a second planning board on my hands here.
Sorry. I'm only trying to make your life easier. You know that's why I
Only
got
trying, we're only trying to avoid issues that we know have already happened.
Good point.
If you'd like, I'd be happy to do it, take a stab at grouping them by type.
You need the definitions first.
Then you're gonna slow me down until I get those.
Damn.
Ah. Anything
No,
else?
I'll welcome the assistance. I just have